Nikkerk, are we good to go?
Yes, we are, Chairperson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Today is Tuesday, the 10th of May, 2022, and it's my privilege as chair of this committee to be welcoming you. My name is Andrikus van der Westhuizen, and as I've said, I'm the chair of this standing committee. Today we will be concentrating on the work and information provided by the Department of Agriculture. And before we kick off, can I just first give members an indication to introduce themselves? I have received apologies from the following people: Minister Ivan Meyer, Dr. Mogale Sebupetsa. They are both attending a cabinet bosberaad, I'm being told. And then also from Honourable Gillian Bosman. And it's a real pleasure for me to welcome our former colleague on this committee and highly experienced member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, Honourable Matlori Maseku, to this meeting. I believe she is standing in for Mr. Bosman. Honourable members, first over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Lorraine Botha.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Matlodi Maseko, alternate member to the committee.
Afternoon, Chairperson Sean August.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Peter Murray.
Thank you very much, honourable members, and most welcome to you all. I believe Mr. Jacobs is going to lead the delegation from the Department of Agriculture today. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Jacobs, and to your team. Perhaps if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then also give an opportunity to the members of your team.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members, and thank you for the invitation today. We always look forward to engaging the Standing Committee. The team that is present here today includes Dr. Ilse Trautmann, my fellow Deputy Director General in the department. Then we're joined by Bongiswa Matoti, the Director for Agricultural Economic Services, who will also be doing part of the presentation today. We also have on the call Cor van der Heewe and Leslie Martinussen from our Sustainable Resource Use and Management side, and then Ms. Hayley Rotkin, who heads up the Agricultural College. I just chose to introduce all of them, Chair, because some are sitting collectively in offices as we're having a telecom problem today, but I trust that you are comfortable with the fact that we are all here. Some you'll see their names on the call, but otherwise we, as I say, a few are sitting collectively in single offices. So that's our delegation, Chairperson and members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs. And then always also a warm welcome to our support staff, without whom this meeting would not be possible. Ms. Irene Nikkerk, our procedural officer, and our committee assistant, Ms. Nomfundo Mshompela. You are all most welcome. Mr. Jacobs, can I then ask that we go straight into your presentation? I believe you're going to share the presentation also amongst yourself and some of your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Can I just make sure that all the members can see the presentation?
Indeed, on our screens. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. So there's a few aspects that the Standing Committee has requested we engage the Standing Committee on. The first relates to the shift of the Elsenburg College to the Department of Higher Education and Training. So, you know, at this stage, Elsenburg College, let me say, is still very much part of the provincial government and part of the Department of Agriculture. We've held a number of meetings with National Treasury, as well as the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And I think the meeting that was last held with National Treasury on the 8th of December 2021 directed a very clear process forward. And the parties agreed at that meeting, and it was a meeting which included the national departments, higher education, training, DALARD, and as I say, National Treasury. The parties agreed that there must be executive consultation before any further administrative processes can be instituted, because by that point in time, there had been no executive consultation on the issue. And that it was agreed at that meeting that the department would engage the Department of Higher Education Training and DALARD to outline a number of options for consideration during the executive consultation. There was then a further meeting held on the 13th of December 2021, where we agreed to the following 5 options, which would form part of the executive engagement. Firstly, that the college shift to DALARD as initially proposed, in other words, the intended status of that shift as directed by DALARD be retained. Secondly, that Elsenburg become an incorporated subdivision of Stellenbosch University. The third option was to expand on the existing framework agreement which the department has with Stellenbosch University to incorporate all courses offered by Elsenburg. And this is the matter that our legal services are currently exploring with the legal unit of Stellenbosch University to see the extent that we can utilize the existing framework agreement and simply expand it. The fourth area was for there to be a declaration of Elsenburg as a higher education institution with a functional mandate to offer higher education and training courses and operate as a higher education and training institution. Of course, that declaration needs to be made by National. The fifth option was to establish Elsenburg as a semi-autonomous higher education institution, as per Fort Cox Agricultural College, so that it would work on a very similar basis to the way that Fort Cox is currently structured. So that was essentially the five options which the 3 entities at an administrative level agreed could form part of the executive engagement. Chairperson, in terms of where we stand currently, as I've said, the department is very much still part of, or the college is still very much part of the department. There has been no date set yet for the executive engagement, and any further administrative processes will only follow once the executive engagement finally happens. And unfortunately, over the last 2 years, there's been no executive consultation between the Ministers of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, and the Provincial MEC responsible for agriculture. So that's where we currently stand at present, Chairperson.
Can we just stop there for a moment?
Certainly.
For other input and questions as well. Can I just say, I see Dr. Troutman's hand is raised.
Chair, thank you. I just want to alert Mr. Jacobs that the slideshow is not moving.
It did move on our side.
It's not moving on our side, but if it moved on your side, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. There's also an echo, which means that probably there's more than one microphone on within the room where you are sitting. Can I just quickly say, in terms of those options, the first option, you say shift to the Department of Agriculture. Land Reform and Rural Development, I was under the impression that the request was for Elsenburg to move to the Department of Higher Education and Training. What happened of that those plans?
No,
Just in
Chair,
terms of-
that seemed to never have been the plan. So it was directed by the Department of Higher Education and Training, but it seems like it was never intended to be a part of the Department of Higher Education and Training. We certainly tried to pursue, and I think we would have been very comfortable if, well, not very comfortable, but it was something that we were quite happy to explore further. But in further engagement with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Higher Education and Training, the view was very clear that the department, or the Elsenburg Agricultural Training Institute, would be and would form part of the Department of Agriculture. So as a higher education arm of the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And that is why the drive for the shift was largely driven by Dallard in the first 2 years, well, 1.5 years of meetings. DHET was, if they had been in one or more than one of those meetings, then it was a surprise, but they were hardly in any of those meetings. It was driven primarily by officials at Dallard. So it was not certainly mandated by DHET, but not driven by DHET. I hope that clears it up, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see Ms. Rodkin's hand.
Chair, just to add to what the DDG has just stated, that in a few meetings, they started introducing the notion of a temporary shift to national agriculture, but there was never any firm commitment as to what that meant, because I specifically asked on several occasions what that meant. And I'm adding this because there were so many meetings over the past few months which Mr. Jacobs didn't necessarily attend, and then I would attend. So I thought it would be useful to note that the notion of a temporary shift did slip in along the way. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you very much. Honourable members, are you happy for us to proceed at this point and to come back to this item when we formulate our resolutions? Thank you. Ms. Rodkin, you can perhaps take down your hand, and then Mr. Jacobs, is Ms. Peterson going to
No, Chair, I will still be continuing with the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. So in terms of the briefing with regards to locusts, and I think it's important just in terms of context and background to understand that the locust infestation has to be seen in the context of the prolonged drought. So what you had is where what we would call the drought areas, when they receive good winter rainfall, and the sun started shining, those were the areas that were actually infested by locusts. And the result was the depletion of planted pastures and veld. We're pleased to say that the locust infestations, and we'll show that, is now currently under control due to the cooler weather, coupled further with spraying efforts. But we are also preparing for what we assume to be or planning for the pending infestation in September, October 2022. In terms of the actions that we employed once we started to realize this is moving into crisis proportions. We, together with the Provincial Disaster Management Centre, established the Provincial Locust Joint Operations Committee, engaging with a number of relevant stakeholders, including organised agriculture, affected municipalities, municipal and provincial disaster management centres, our senior management, Cape Nature, SAMParks, and disaster management officials at national level. We also form part as the department of the National Locust Joint Operations Committee, which is chaired by Dallard. We then immediately also, as a department, made available an amount of 4.9 million for the locust intervention. And in terms of amount spent, and we procured just under 11,000 liters of chemicals, 49 sprayers, 101 sets of PPE. So we've spent at the to date 4.4 million. It's still just over 500,000 that still needs to be spent. There were a number of challenges experienced over the last 6-7 months since October last year. One of the biggest challenges which confronted us is the fact that the locust control teams had not been paid at all, or there was a massive backlog in the payment of the locust control teams, and these control teams need to be paid by Dallard. That was identified at that point as one of the biggest risks, because you had all of these locust officers who had gone out of their way to try to help to combat this spread of locusts, and they were not being compensated at all. There was at a point insufficient pesticides, and one of the reasons for that is that the National Department supplies the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and the Free State. And we, together with National, are currently engaging, and we have engaged extensively with suppliers to ensure sufficient stock. It was either insufficient or poor quality personal protective clothing or equipment. And there was also insufficient or poor quality spraying equipment. Because one of the things that we found out is that the equipment supplied by National is either old or poorly maintained. And also chemicals were leaking from sprayers, which posed a particular health risk to workers. As the department and the province, we were central to the provincial coordination of the locust intervention, and the department worked closely with Dallard and other stakeholders to try to manage and mitigate the impact and the spread of the locusts. We procured, as I've reported, a number of just under 12,000 liters of pesticide. We've already procured 49 sprayers. There's still a further 65 that's on order, 101 PPE sets, and ensured funding availability for aerial spraying as well. And then together with National, we assisted in formal training of locust control teams in all of the districts, and also held workshops and debriefing sessions with farmers. Our departmental communication plan also informed the public regarding the locust infestation, as well as other relevant information. I thought, Chair, it would be useful just to share some of the maps that we started to put together, thanks to Dr. Troutman and the team. So as of 16th of March, you can see the migration into the province from particularly the Northern Cape, and you can see the extent of the occurrence, and it really covered Maritzburg, Beaufort West, in fact, almost the entire central Karoo, Ladysmith, Carlsdorp, Oudtshoorn. Then once we started to get a handle on things, they were still very prevalent, but there started to be out-migration of these locusts towards the end of March. You can see even though Central Karoo was still covered, it was significantly less. And then you had a small area of Calitzdorp and parts of Garden Route. As we moved to the 8th of April, it started to be located in the Beaufort West and Maritzburg areas. But we also, due to wind patterns, we started to see the migration of the locusts towards the Eastern Cape. Now, this was largely because of wind patterns. And where we stand currently on the 5th of May, that was last week, so very small numbers of locusts have been spotted in Maritzburg, Beaufort West, and the northern part of the West Coast. So that's currently where it's observed. As you can see, it's significantly less than what we had in the middle of March 2022. So to a large extent, I think we've been able to manage the spread of the locusts, mitigate it, although, you know, the big challenge always is the eggs that get laid. Eggs can lay dormant for 8 to 10 years. And under the right weather conditions, that's when the locusts start to hatch. And then you have a very small window of opportunity to dispose of them. So that's, I think, Chair, that is currently where we stand with regards to the locusts. Don't know if you want me to pause here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Honourable members, any questions that you might have?
Is that on the first presentation about Elsenburg, sir, or is it about locusts?
Mr. Murray, Honourable Murray, I was under the impression that, you know, we paused after Elsenburg for questions, and now we're looking at the second part of the presentation, particularly the locusts.
Oh, no, I missed that. I just went to, for a minute, I was away from my computer. I didn't hear you ask for a question on Elsenburg. I'm sorry that I missed it, but I'm under your guidance. If you say I forfeited my opportunity to ask a question on Elsenburg, I'll have to abide by it, sir. I subject myself to your ruling.
Thank you so much, Honourable Murray. Honourable Murray, if we could have questions on the locust infestation now, and obviously at the end of the full presentation, I think members would be able to again comment or ask questions. And obviously, as I indicated, we will also be dealing with the resolutions stemming from the full presentation later on. So I recognize Honourable Maseko's hand at this time.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and also from the department, thanks for the presentations. I just want to find out just a quick question. How or what is the relationship between the different provinces? And I'm asking this because I traveled to Pretoria driving the 1st of January 2022, and that's where I made a swarm of locusts on the Free State Northern Cape roads. And when I look at this, I think we started to react around March. Now the question is, if those locusts, they were still migrating from the other provinces, do we have as a country mechanisms in place to try to stop any extra movement or any damage that can happen as they move and spread towards other provinces, or we don't have something like that? We have to wait until it can be declared disaster, then that we can be reactive to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next question, Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to check with the department in regard to the damage done by the swarms of locust. What was the impact of it? And in terms of rand value, what was that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. Can I just ask two questions? The first one is, in a response to a written question, Minister Meyer responded that nature reserves pose a particular problem regarding locusts, and obviously the environmental affairs and the fight against locusts with poison. I can just imagine that those two are at loggerheads with one another. Perhaps you could just tell us, what are you doing? Are you kind of guarding the boundaries of our nature reserves for such swarms that might migrate from those protected areas, if I can use that word? That's my first one. The second one is, it seems to me as if some of the swarms that infested the Eastern Cape were then traced back to the Western Cape. If I look particularly at the slide that we currently have on our screens, and it seems to me, if I recall correctly, you said that's also perhaps due to wind, the right direction of wind, etc. And obviously, I feel that, I wouldn't like other provinces eventually to blame the Western Cape for passing on our problem by not managing our problem well enough. What would you propose, must we say, to our colleagues in the Eastern Cape that might blame us as the Western Cape government for not stopping these swarms of locusts from migrating from the Western Cape to the Eastern Cape? And then I recognize also Honourable Marais on this topic.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, this is an interesting thing. It comes from biblical times. Even the pharaohs had problems with locusts. But the strange thing is, nobody ever stopped to ask themselves what brings them to a particular place. It's interesting from a scientific point of view. Can the department say, has there been any research done? What draws locusts away from certain places to other places, and do they have, are they selective in what they destroy or eat, or do they just devour anything in their path? Can they perhaps give us a reason? Is it seasonal? Can we expect them at a particular time of the year, or how is it that we could scientifically not get locusts under control? We can control everything from lions, we can control bees, and we can control everything. How come for decades now, maybe centuries, we're fighting locusts and we can't address the problem? Is there any answer to this?
Thank you very much, Honourable Marais. And if I can again pose a second question. Obviously, when one works with poison, and as I've said, you also speak about the environment, I think we've learned through the years that one must be very careful, and that some poisons have got an effect also then on the animals that then feed off those insects. And I'm particularly thinking of poisons that were used in the past, like dieldrin and DDT, which, quite interestingly to me, were reintroduced because they are still the most effective way to curb mosquitoes that carry the malaria virus, etc. So perhaps if you wouldn't mind, yeah, and I don't think malaria is a virus. I think it's a protozoa. Dr. Trautmann might be able to correct me, but perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about the poisons that are being approved or that were approved, that are being used, and perhaps just the long-term effect of such poisons on the biodiversity of the veld. Thank you. And with that, over and back to you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members, for the questions. I want to immediately hand over to Dr. Troutman, who is ready and waiting for some of the responses, and I will pick up immediately thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Jacobs, members and Chairperson. I think when we deal with pests like locusts, we're looking at a mass of insects coming your way. What makes it more challenging is the mere fact that locusts develop different stages. So when you have the crawlers and they come in the thousands in your direction, the crawlers are easy to manage because they are soil or ground bound. They're walking, you can spray them. Then they develop into flying insects, and then your challenge comes because they start flying, and it's very difficult to manage a flying pest because they're everywhere, and especially if it's a windy situation, you can't spray because it would be very detrimental to human spraying, but also to the environment if you just nilly-willy start spraying. So what the locust officers did was, when they discovered the plague or the pest coming our way, they immediately started with type of fighting the crawler stage. But once you get to the stage where they fly, it really becomes difficult. They migrate very quickly, and it's all related to climate change patterns, wind patterns, weather patterns, and that is what made it so difficult. In terms of the comment, in terms of nature reserves, we must keep one thing in mind, that all pests like locusts would go for the most appetizing, most palatable crop to find. And if I was a locust, I would not go for fynbos if I can go for a soft piece of maize leaf or something like that. So that is why it is such a detrimental pest to the agricultural sector, because you would not find masses of insects like locusts in your nature reserves, because the nature of our fynbos is not always very palatable as opposed to agricultural crops that are really, really palatable. Now, in terms of are we guilty, if I can call it like that we're sort of sending the locusts to another province? No, surely we're not on the side of guilt. What happens is that the locusts move from province to province, and all provinces, with the assistance of national government, try to combat the infestation to their best extent. However, it would move from province to province, and then as it moves from the Western Cape, it would move to the Eastern Cape and would be ready with the support of the locust officers to combat that. The problem, as Daryl has clearly indicated, committee, is that there was some challenges, and in that respect, we as a department intervened with extra PPE, extra spray equipment, and so forth. So each province is then dealing with their own challenge of locusts coming their way. But the more you can sort of restrain it in your province, the less of these would go another way. But they multiply, they insects, and they multiply, and it is a problem. Once it becomes colder, you will find that they become more dormant, and the problem will be of a less extent. In terms of the poison or the agrochemicals that were sprayed, they are all registered according to the Act 36 of 1947, which is the Agrochemical, Fertilizer and Pesticides Act. We cannot spray any unregistered chemicals, and that was used. However, one of the challenges encountered in the entire South Africa was that those chemicals, or I prefer to call them agrochemicals, we ran out of stock, and there was not enough stock available to spray in all regions. In terms of the biodiversity, Chairperson, people say that in actual fact, where the locust was sprayed and they left, you could actually see an improvement in the pastures because of the good organic material. In actual fact, locusts are a very, very good source of protein. However, the farmers kept their animals away from the areas where it was sprayed because insect that's sprayed with a chemical you do not want to feed to your stock, your livestock. So in a nutshell, I hope I've dealt with all your questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
I can continue, Chair. There were.
Just quickly, I do see our IT support officer, Ms. Morris's hand. Ms. Morris, would you like to come in? Was that an accidental indication?
Sorry,
Okay, thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Chair. So in terms of the kind of pesticides, I think just for the benefit of the committee, there are 3 that's approved. As Dr. Troutman has indicated, they need to be environmentally sensitive and approved through a formal process. So the 3 currently in use that has been approved is Sumay Alpha, Desi, and Delta Nex. I think just in terms of our partnership with other provinces, that's I think exactly the reason why National Institute established at the National Disaster Management Center a national job to deal with the issue of the locusts, because all of the provinces are represented at the national JOC, and we are also there together with Eastern Cape and Northern Cape. So I think that's where I just want to give the committee a sense of comfort that through that national-led process, given that the mitigation of this particular outbreak is a national responsibility as well, supported by the provinces, but it certainly does register and does involve all of the provinces in trying to mitigate this outbreak. And then I think just the one other thing, the question around what the damage was, the impact and rand value. I also want to say that our agricultural economists are still busy finalizing the full extent of the economic impact and rand value. We need that information in order to direct a further request around the disaster classification. And so the economic impact assessment has not been concluded yet. This is at both a macroeconomic level as well as further details on farm level. I think, Chairperson, we've answered all of the questions in relation to the locusts, but I hand back to you to check if there were any more.
Thank you for that explanation from both yourself and Dr. Troutman. To summarize then, does it mean that birds feeding on, can I call it poisoned or treated swarms or dead insects would not be detrimentally affected by the spraying of locusts? Once you've responded to that, you're welcome to also move on to the next item in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Troutman, you want to have the first stab at responding?
Chair, thank you. I cannot say with confidence that the sprayed insects would not kill birds, but in most cases where we deal with a registered agrochemical, those chemicals would be bird friendly. That's one of the the criteria that would be taken into consideration. But I don't have stats, Chairperson, on whether some birds were killed due to the eating or consuming the sprayed locust. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs, over to you for
Thank
the
you.
next part.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I also, and having served on the provincial JOC, we do not have any information which points to the fact that other insects died as a result of consuming these locusts, because that is exactly why the chemicals that we use are deemed to be environmentally sensitive. There's a number of chemicals that service providers want to make available, but I think, and we fully support National, we want to make sure that it's environmentally sensitive, and that is why there is only 3 chemicals approved for this purpose. Thank you, Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you. In terms of drought and veld recovery, which was also one of the areas that was flagged by the Standing Committee, there's, in terms of summer rainfall areas, there's been relatively good recovery in the summer rainfall areas. Many plants admittedly are dead, and the veld will need 2 or more years of above average rainfall to return to its full potential. In terms of the winter rainfall areas, the expectation is, and this is based on the veld condition in September 2021 and February 2022, that if the winter rainfall areas do not get average to above average rainfall, the veld conditions will revert back to a critically dry situation, and there are certain areas at risk, namely Matsikama, Cederberg, and the Witzenberg districts. I think in terms of drought support, 20th July 2021 marks the last classification of the prolonged drought as a national disaster by the NDMC, with affected areas including Central Karoo District, parts of Garden Route, West Coast, Cape Winelands, and Overberg regions. In terms of the further support to qualifying farmers, we received confirmation of 48.1 million, which was available as from 1st of April 2022, and there's approximately 1,163 farmers targeted for support. There's also the seed project to support areas with above average rainfall with seed to grade fodder in order to promote veld recovery and regeneration. In terms of invasive alien clearing projects, clearing of invasive species in riparian zones to conserve water and promote the rehabilitation and the restoration of natural vegetation. And then there's the river protection works, which is focused on water conservation for ecological functioning and conservation of natural resources. So, Chairperson, I just thought in terms of responding to just providing an update on the situation with the drought, just to share some of this information before we move on to the next section, which is the agricultural outlook, and which I will hand over to Ms. Bongiswa Matoti. I don't know if there's any questions on the veld recovery status and the drought. Thanks, Chair.
Honourable members, any questions on the drought and the department's support to farmers in the drought-stricken areas? Mr. Jacobs, I do not see any hands at this point in time. Can I just a question and a comment from my side? The first one is particularly on the Matsikama area. It's my impression that, you know, when you refer to summer rainfall, winter rainfall, that the bigger Karoo area did receive their fair share of rain this past summer, but that the Matsikama area might still be experiencing drought. Perhaps if you could just, I know you did refer to that, but what are you saying that, you know, the next few months will determine whether we will revert back to a drought, meaning that for now, drought conditions in the Matsikama area is somewhat relieved. And then secondly, can I just say, from a farmer in the Klein Karoo, farming with deciduous fruit, how grateful they were for support received from Hortgrow that offered to provide them with young plants from to replace the orchards that unfortunately were, can I use the word, decimated by the fact that they couldn't irrigate for the last few years. Unfortunately, their situation in the Klein Karoo, there at the Karlitsdorp, Ladysmith area has thankfully also improved quite considerably. So they were able to get some young plants, back into those orchards, and they are obviously looking forward to again being able to harvest in some 3 years' time from now. No further hands, so over to you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much. Just in terms of Matsikama, it remains an area at risk. I think we, and while there may have been rainfall, I think the risk is always, and we are confronted with that in terms of Central Karoo and certain areas of this province, that it is never sufficient rainfall. Even the average, because it's been a 7-8 year drought, so the average of the last 8 years is so low that even if you say it's above average rainfall, it's almost, it is so little that the areas remain under extreme risk, and I think that's really our big concern, and so we constantly trying to find, or not just the improvements to water management in those areas, but until then, our support to the farmers and in terms of both fodder relief and advice and technical support remains a critical part of our mandate, and we acknowledge the point you made, Chairperson, in terms of assistance that some of the farmers have received. We certainly transferred, I think, just over R1 million to Hortgrow to provide that kind of support. So we certainly welcome any positive messages, and because it means that we are intervening correctly in this space. Thank you, Chairperson. Can I continue with the agricultural outlook? Well, Ms. Matoti, can I hand over to her, Chair?
Please do. Thank you. Ms. Matoti, we are listening.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon to the members. We just took a pause because we were actually changing chairs. Chair, I'm actually going to be talking on the agricultural outlook and also the potential implications of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've just actually focused only on a few major commodities, and we know there will actually be severe implications going forward. The first one to talk to is wheat, and as we can actually see on the slide in front of us, nationally, the area under wheat production has been projected actually to have increased by 3%, while at a country level, on average, we actually have observed the declining yields. And as a consequence, of this, the production estimates show a slight decline, of wheat production at a country level, especially for the 2021 season compared actually to the previous year. And I must actually mention that the Western Cape contributes nearly half of the national wheat production. And according to the production estimates that we actually have received from Grain SA, they actually have projected an increase for the Western Cape of about 4% in wheat production. That is actually this season compared to the previous season. And that growth for the Western Cape is observed to be very much linked to favorable rainfalls that were actually received, and also to the area that actually has increased. Also, but in the Western Cape as well, there has been an observation of yields that actually have been declining as well, irrespective actually of the increasing, production that we've seen, on the top bullets, but which is linked very much on the area of production that is actually increased. Sorry. And as we can see the graph here, we see a very good 2020 season, which is actually the previous year, and the 2021 season that is also projected actually to be a good year. And yeah, that this is a situation actually for wheat, and this is actually really focusing on at a domestic level, because wheat is generally not an exported, product, but it's a very, very, very key, product actually for our domestic consumption. The Western Cape, even though is actually producing, a lot of wheat, that wheat is not actually exported out of the country, but it is mainly exported within the country, being sent actually to the other provinces that are actually not producing wheat, or those, or where there is actually a less production actually in other provinces. With regards to fruits, I'm showing on this graph the projected exports actually for major fruits, especially within the plum and stone fruits. And if you get to look into this graph, especially on the last column, this is a comparison actually of how exports actually have been over the years, and we can see the figures actually for the 2022 estimates. But the column on the further right, as one can see, we can see all positive, figures, where we can see apples are projected to increase by 6%, and pears, the increase is projected to at 12%. The plums, there is a 3% projected increase. The nectarines, there is a 26% projected increase. For peach, there is 2%. It is actually only for apricots where there actually has been a negative, projection with regards actually to exports for fruits. I don't know, Chair, if maybe there is any questions on this part before I move to the second part.
Members to rather keep their questions until you've finished. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Looking actually at the impact of Ukraine and Russia conflict, we are at this point in time referring actually as to potential impact, because we, in terms actually of data, we still actually do not actually have gotten enough data to depict, the impact, the actual impact. But of course, there are means and ways where we can show what is currently happening and what is actually the likely, potential impact that, the country and the province will experience in this regard. In introduction, I must actually mention that Russia and Ukraine are top suppliers of global key staple foods, as both countries account for more than 30% of world wheat production and exports, and of which they also account for 17% of maize and 32% of sunflower and 16% of 32% of sunflower oil and 16% of sunflower. About 99.71% of all wheat that is actually processed is actually used for human consumption, and of which about 10% is used for animal feed. And 70 to 80% of all wheat flour produced is used for bread baking. And this actually attracted, an annual consumer expenditure of about 6.7 million during 2020. And for the 2021 season, South Africa was estimated to have imported about 1.47 million tons of wheat, of which there is a shortfall of about 495,000 tons. And for this shortfall, it will be expected of South Africa to get this remainder from other alternative markets, and of which that situation will definitely actually, affect the prices. In terms actually of South African top 10 agricultural exports imports from Russia, I've actually started with imports because imports are actually very important, especially for the agri-processing sector, and also imports are also very important actually for our agricultural production, because some of the imports were actually using them as inputs in the production process. And as we can actually see in here, there are a lot actually of chemical inputs that we are actually importing from Russia. And we can see the annual growth actually on the right. I am not going to go line by line on this, but on the second table, we tried also to look, or let me say to compare the Q3 of 2021 with Q4 as well, in just actually to check if maybe there are actually any changes. But on this one, there is actually nothing much that we can actually pick up, even though we are actually expecting, seeing actually some declines. But those declines cannot be associated as yet to the Russia and associated with the war, but because actually of macroeconomic factors. We are also seeing the same with regards to imports from Ukraine. The numbers might not actually be looking, as massive in terms actually of value compared actually to our major countries where we actually get to import, from. But of course, these are actually quite significant. And as we can see in here, in terms actually from the Ukraine, we are actually importing a lot of peas from them. And we are also importing, there is millet seed that we actually are importing actually in there. There are also, some other inputs like your urea that we're actually getting from them, and other products that are actually also used in the agri-processing subsector. But in terms actually of imports from Ukraine, if we compare Q3 and Q4, we actually have seen, some positive growth actually in the, so meaning that there's still quite some reliance actually for those products, that we are actually importing from those, and mainly it's actually agricultural inputs that we're actually importing from Ukraine. With regards to exports, I must actually mention that South Africa exports about 80% of its fresh fruit to Russia, and about 20% of its pears, and 8% of its citrus actually to this market. Even though we are seeing a negative growth with regard actually to the exports into this country, and similarly, if you actually are comparing actually Q3 and actually Q4, we are actually seeing a negative growth, but the fact of the matter is that these markets are still very much important. And I think we will actually see their importance, especially, once we actually get to come to the Western Cape, trade statistics. But it's clear one of actually or let me say some of the top, exports From your fresh side, that is actually your oranges, your pears, mandarins, and lemons and apples. And while the picture is a little bit different, you know, on the other side, but the fresh produce is still from quarter to quarter that is actually being compared in here. We see fresh dried oranges, we see pears again, we see wine, which is actually also appearing actually in here. And yeah, the list is actually, you know, can be seen as actually shown on this graph. With regards actually to our exports to Ukraine, we seem not actually to have much. Again, you know, as we can see, also a decline in terms actually of our annual growth. But as I actually indicated, you know, this picture is again looking a little bit different for the Western Cape. I've been talking a lot about the Western Cape. And I'm just actually showing this graph, just actually to present the fact that the Western Cape will definitely be affected differently by the Ukraine and Russia, you know, conflict, because Western Cape is an agricultural, it is actually an exporting province, as the province actually contributed more than half, you know, of primary agricultural exports at a country level. And in 2021, the Western Cape contributed over 55% to national primary agricultural exports, of which 39% was actually from the agri-processing sub-segment, and more particularly the food, beverage, and tobacco segment. So this slide really is just actually to show how important actually is actually the global climate actually for the Western Cape, given that it is actually an exporting province. And talking directly onto the impact, Russia and Ukraine are both important markets for this province. And these markets combined, they absorb approximately 3.4 billion worth of agricultural exports. And our top 10 exports in value terms is actually the oranges, pears, and apples. While actually on a quarterly basis, I think we can see it's actually oranges, lemons, grapefruit, and actually wine and mandarin. And I must say, the province actually exported a wheat worth of 53 million during 2020, and a significant share of Western Cape imports from Ukraine were sunflower seed or safflower oil that was actually worth 39 million rands. In terms actually of our exports and imports from Russia, on the left we actually have got exports, and then on the right we've got imports. If we look actually into the Western Cape exports, we can see, if we look into that column that actually says annual growth rate, that our exports for our fresh produce has been really increasing to Russia. And even if you check this actually over a 10-year period, you can see the positive growth rates actually of the products that are actually listed actually in here: your oranges, your pears, your apples, your mandarins, lemons, and the list, you know, as you go further down. There has been actually an increase in terms actually of exports that are going into this market from the Western Cape, and this growth has been seen over a 10-year period as well. With regard to wheat, of course, we've actually imported quite a significant component actually of wheat from Russia, and we've got about 293, % in terms actually of the annual growth rate in there, if you actually get to check wheat and wheat products. And of course, we can also see an increase like from your linseed on this category, even though we actually have seen some decline actually for others over an annual period. With regards to exports to Ukraine, of course, this market is actually quite smaller as compared actually to Russia. But again, if you look actually into exports actually of our fresh produce, you can see the positive growth rate, you know, for oranges, lemons, grapefruit, almost all our fresh produce, and including wine in this regard, with regards actually to exports to Ukraine, and with regards actually to the imports. We have seen, you know, some shift in terms actually of sunflower, you know, seed, but crude oil, we have seen actually a tremendous annual growth rate. And also for peas, we can see a significant actually increase actually in there. The millet and the linseed also actually have got quite a significant, you know, annual growth rate for these other products. But where there is a dash, it's clear we haven't actually been picking growth actually on those. As part actually of this Russia-Ukraine conflict, we've also started actually some work where we actually have decided to track food prices for certain commodities within the province. And for this graph, you know, we are actually showing, you know, how prices actually have been behaving over, you know, a 10-year period. But I would love for you to actually to pay your attention for the period January 2022, where I think, you know, in the previous year, you could have seen general inflation actually going down. But in 2022, you see that graph, or let me say that line that is actually in yellow in color, increasing, and also for the Western Cape, you can also see the gray one also increasing for January 2022, meaning that, you know, we have seen inflation actually started actually to pick up, especially in for some commodities. Of course, not actually for all items, but there are specific, you know, commodities where we actually have seen, you know, price increases. Some of the commodities that we've actually been checking is actually fruit, but for fruit, we can see for 2022, which is actually your yellow line. You see that yellow line that we've been seeing some increases in there, as the yellow line is actually below the average line, which is actually your dotted line. But if you go to the vegetables for 2022, one can see that yellow line that is actually above average. The trend is actually increasing, but the prices are already above, you know, average for the period January to February. And I'm not going to actually go into all of them, but if you actually check into all for other food items, you can also pick up now again on the graph that is on your bottom right, that in general, I think food prices actually have been above average, meaning that 22 prices are already starting above average as compared actually to your 2021 year. For wine, we can actually also see the very same, that yellow line, even though prices actually are showing an increasing trend, but for 2022, the prices are already above 2021 prices and are above, you know, average prices. But where there is actually a major concern is actually the bread and cereal prices. As you can see for bread for 2022, the period between January and February, you can already see that that yellow line for 2022 is showing an increasing trend. And already the prices are above 2020 and 2021. So it's clear there is actually going to be a challenge actually with regards to bread. And you will recall on my introductory slide when I actually said that, you know, both Ukraine and Russia are responsible for about 30% of global wheat production. So it's clear whatever that is actually happening in there is already starting actually to have implications actually for our for prices actually for these commodities, that is actually your bread and cereals. Apart actually from food, we've been also tracking some inputs. And what you see in front of you is actually the prices actually for diesel and petrol. And of course, you know, the prices actually for these two commodities actually have been increasing, you know, over this 10-year period, even though there's been some few years where there've been actually some decreases. But in general, our diesel and petrol prices actually have been increasing. And these are key inputs in the production process. And they are actually also actually on. And with regards to other inputs, I just would like actually to draw your attention on animal vaccines, which are actually the picture that is actually on your product. If you check 2022 there, 2022, you just actually check the dot that is actually on the main line on your x-axis. It's clear the animal vaccines, you know, the prices actually have been lower between January and between January 2022. But if you go on your bottom left for fertilizers, if you check the fertilizers, one can see 2020, which is actually your blue line, and you can see 2022, which is your light green, and 2021, which is gosh, I don't know whether that is actually a brown color. But if you look into the 2022 fertilizer prices, even though they are below 2021 for the period January to February, but those prices are already above average, you know, when actually are being tracked actually over a 10-year period. But if you go on your bottom right under plant protection, it's clear plant protection, that is mainly your chemicals in there. It's clear chemical prices have increased tremendously. You can see that green dot there for the period January and February, that green dot is actually an outlier. It's totally an outlier, you know, beyond your 2021 prices and beyond actually your average, you know, trend in here. So our chemical, you know, prices have really been increasing, you know, and that is actually the start for 2021. And I just actually want to mention that this increase has also been, you know, depicted actually in 2020, especially for some seasons. And we were actually picking up also on seeds that the 2022 prices are also above average. As you can see, the green dot there for 2022, but we're also seeing, you know, the very same for 2022. But for 2022, I must say, sorry, for 2022 is for equipment and tractors. That is your equipment and machinery. Your prices actually in there have been on par. As represented by that, I think it's a pink dot that exactly is actually on the same dot actually between the January and the February period. But that is actually for your machinery and implements. Chair, I am actually stopping actually in here in terms actually of the other things. This is probably actually my last slide before I'm actually going to give over to Mr. Jacobs to talk about actual conclusions. But there are some concluding remarks that I would actually like to pick up on before we go to the next session. But some actually of the concluding remarks is the fact that the ongoing Russia and Ukraine conflict, of course, poses a major threat to South Africa and the Western Cape agricultural sector. And of course, the people that will actually be affected the most in here are our farmers, as we can see that for the period 2021, our price actually of inputs have been increasing. Now with the war in these two countries, the situation is just actually going to get worse. That's actually what we're actually trying to pick up from the trends. And again, the limited supply of wheat, as these actually two countries are actually, you know, responsible for the major component actually of world wheat, it will actually have a negative impact for our domestic markets. And of course, you know, as we can see, the prices actually of bread are already in increasing. And of course, this is actually going to have a huge impact at household level, especially, you know, your poor, you know, contingency, as, you know, bread prices are actually increasing. That category is really going to be affected. And of course, other reality is actually seen at the packing houses, because the packing of that was destined for Russia and Ukraine had to be stopped. And when those actually pack houses actually had to stop actually packing for those markets, it's clear jobs actually were affected or are already affected. And there are congestions that are really seriously being actually experienced in the port of Rotterdam, Antwerp, and also Bremerhaven. And these congestions actually at these ports are also adding to the challenges that we are actually experiencing, you know, within our own ports, that is the Cape Town port. And also now added into this challenge is the Durban port, which is actually not functioning well because actually of the floods that actually have recently affected that province. And part actually of the challenges is that some actually of our exporters that exported to Russia, in particular, have actually had challenges with regards actually to payments. You know, if SWIFT payments actually had to be stopped actually for that country. And also with actually countries not being able to export into these two markets. You know, our exporters and, you know, even globally that are actually exporting into those countries, they actually had to look at alternative markets. And that situation is actually resulting into oversupply into some actually markets, and therefore pushing down, you know, prices. And we know when prices are actually pushed down, the bottom line is that our producers are actually going to be, you know, affected at farm level as well. And there is actually the other reality that we actually need to be aware of, that South Africa does not have favorable market agreements in most markets. And there is actually a serious, you know, need for this country to look actually for new markets to remain competitive and resilient, you know, to market shocks like this Russia and Ukraine war. And of course, you know, we also have to look for new markets, you know, given that production actually of some actually commodities actually have been increasing. You have seen the projections that I've actually presented in here for our palm and fruit, and those actually projected increases, you know, are clear to us that there is actually a need for this country to look for new markets. And just actually to show you the picture actually of what's happening actually with regards to our trade agreements vis-a-vis our competitors. On your left, on your left blue is mainly the the markets that are actually targeted by South Africa and actually also our competitors. On top, it is actually our competitors, while actually on the left, it is actually the major markets that we're actually also eyeing actually as a country. If you actually check into that column for South Africa, almost all those blocks into those markets, they're actually red, meaning that South Africa doesn't actually have got free trade agreements. But while if you actually look into your Australia within the southern hemisphere, you can see a lot actually of the green blocks, while there is only two, you know, yellow blocks. But if you look actually further right, you can actually check Peru and Chile. In most actually of those countries that we actually are competing, you know, with these countries, you know, and they all actually have got trade agreements. And it's clear, you know, South Africa then is actually not competing fairly, you know, into those markets. Chair, from this point, I'm actually gonna allow DG Jacobs to talk actually on the forward and actually actions in relation actually to this presentation. Thanks so much, Chair. Are there any questions first before I actually give over to DG Jacobs?
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you very much for the presentation. And Honourable members.
Or should I allow DG Jacobs actually to conclude, and then we actually take the questions afterward, Chair?
Perhaps we can. I think you've raised such a number of important matters, affecting every consumer. Perhaps there are some members. Let's just see what the response is. Honourable members, any questions that you would like to pose at this stage? Ma'am, can I just...
Yes, I would like to pose a question.
Yes, please. Honourable Marais then.
Yes, I would like to know, what is the reason that there's no favourable agreements in most markets and that we have no free trade agreements? We are a member of BRICS. Are you telling me we have no free trade agreements with BRIC countries and nor with the West? Why is that the case? That's a strange statement you've made, that South Africa has no favourable agreements in most markets. Is there a reason for this?
Chair, the reason that we can actually, allude to is the fact that we are talking, agriculture, while the free trade agreements are usually done actually for various commodities. And in some cases is actually the issue actually of the competitiveness. Because I'm going to make example now, if we can actually have a free trade actually agreement with China, China is actually producing a lot actually of products and actually producing those products cheaply than we can actually produce in South Africa. So it's clear the moment we actually have got an open free trade agreement between South Africa and China, we might actually have got a very a challenging situation where some actually of our industries might actually be affected negatively because China is managing to produce cheaply than we can actually within the country. But I think what we are actually advocating for is that at least we can, as a country, try and actually negotiate for preferential trade agreement, which are actually sector specific. And in this regard, we would love to see, preferential trade agreement with some actually of the countries that we are actually talking to. And these are the things that we actually keep on raising actually with our national government. And I believe, these are some of the things that they actually are looking at, Chair, because, we are actually one actually of the significant exporters, especially for agricultural produce. Yes, these are some of the things that are actually being raised and that our national government is actually busy saying that they're actually looking at, Chairperson. But it's not in all regions. I must actually mention that with regards actually to Europe actually being our major exporting region, we actually have got a favorable trade, agreement in the under the EPA. But it's these new markets where we need actually to pay serious attention actually for us actually to have, preferential trade agreements if we cannot actually have got free trade agreements. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was a most interesting presentation by yourself, and thank you also for your comments in this regard this far. Just two questions from my side in the absence of any other hands. The first one is, it seems to me as if there's a renewed emphasis, therefore, on trade with Africa, and that Africa has been called an emerging giant, and that there may be, particularly for fresh produce, a wonderful opportunity not far literally from our doorstep. Would you mind just commenting on that one? And then my second question is in terms of wheat and wheat prices. It seems to me then as if, yes, you've referred to the high increases in the input costs of our farmers, but that grain prices in general and particularly, including wheat, that those prices might also increase to the detriment of consumers, but hopefully to the advantage of our particularly Western Cape farmers as well, the wheat farmers. What is your prediction or expectations in that regard? Wouldn't the agricultural sector be benefiting eventually from this conflict that might be pushing up international prices? Or how are our prices determined domestically? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chair. With regards to trade with Africa, of course, I do want to agree with you in there that Africa is actually an emerging giant. And of course, you know, over the years, we have seen our exports, you know, especially actually of our fresh produce increasing in that country. Sorry, within the continent. As a result, you know, as the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, we've actually tried to be putting a lot more emphasis, you know, into Africa actually as a continent. And from the previous years, you know, already we have actually started actually targeting certain markets, and not only for fresh produce, but actually also for wines. In particular for wine, we some actually of the markets where we are actually putting investments into in collaborations actually with Wines of South Africa is Kenya, it's Ghana, it's Uganda, Angola as well, even though we've been actually experiencing some challenges actually in markets like Angola because of the economy, you know, into that country, but we've actually seen some gains actually in there. And we are actually, you know, continually pushing in this regard. And as I'm actually speaking, you know, our department is actually busy with an Africa strategy. And that is actually for us, you really, you know, in an attempt to also, you know, be ready to benefit from the free trade, you know, from the Africa free trade, continental free trade area. So we are actually taking Africa, you know, serious, and our exports have been, you know, increasing. And of course, we are actually also, you know, expecting to actually put more investments actually into the continent because we actually really see it actually as a potential with all these challenges that we're actually experiencing, you know, in other markets. We are actually hoping, you know, that Africa can actually step in, you know, to help, you know, to a certain extent. With regards to wheat prices, Chair, of course, as I indicated, with regards actually to wheat products in particular, I've actually shown that bread prices are actually increasing, and that is actually really to the detriment actually of our producers. But if you actually are looking actually at production prices, if you're looking actually at wheat per ton, our producers, you know, stand to benefit in there from wheat prices. But those gains, of course, they will actually be eroded because on the other side, we see the prices actually of inputs, you know, increasing. So unfortunately, the gains, you know, that we could actually pick up from the increasing, you know, wheat prices, they will really be, you know, negatively affected, or they will be cancelled, you know, by the increase in the increase in input prices. And yes, Chair, so that is actually the situation. And we do not actually see this, you know, calming down anytime soon, especially with regards to input prices, because as I actually indicated, we've already started seeing that these input prices have been increasing already from 2021, and the war, you know, in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is just actually going to make the situation worse. So that's my take, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matoti. Are you going to lead us on the next slides, or is it going to be Mr. Jacobs?
Mr. Jacobs will actually conclude for us. Thank you, Chair. Maybe you might just decide to give me one more slide. I don't know, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, and you can. It seems to me you can go back.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the last two, I think 1 or 2 slides, just in terms of our summary, way forward, and action.
I didn't see my hand.
Apologies, Honourable Murray. My apologies. Please jump in.
Thank you. Seeing that Western Cape produce 50% or more of South Africa's food production, it's interesting to know that they aren't looking more towards Africa for export. First of all, I would like to know, is it because they are not stable enough economically so that we can expect payment for our exports? What is the reason? that Western Cape produce doesn't find its way to the countries to the north of us, but rather to China and Russia and other countries very far from us. Would she like to venture a response to that?
Chair, it's a pity that I actually haven't been presenting our trade statistics in totality. But because on this presentation, I've been actually focusing on the two markets, that is Russia and actually Ukraine. In fact, you know, also when I was actually giving the answer to the chairperson, indeed, Africa is a very important market for us. And over the years, we've actually been seeing the exports of our fresh produce, including wine, you know, being increasing actually into the continent. And hence, I've actually mentioned that, you know, as a result, we ended up actually prioritizing, you know, some few markets where we would love actually to, you know, put more effort and actually, you know, do some rigorous actually activities in there in an attempt to actually to make sure that we increase actually our exports. Indeed, the fruit industry, you know, and our beverage sector, that is your fruit juices and actually wine, they have been really taking advantage actually of that market. So the exports have been increasing, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Maria, I see your hand is still raised.
Sorry, sir, I lowered it now. I don't want to delay the discussion, but I would have thought that would be very important for us because of relevant cost factors of exporting, seeing we don't have no free trade agreements actually to speak of. I would have been interested to know exactly what our trade with African countries are, but I will leave it for that now, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Matoti. Perhaps you would mind just speaking about the free trade into Africa?
With regards actually to Africa, Chair, there is currently a continental free trade agreement that is actually underway. And as I can speak, a majority actually of all the countries actually have signed on that Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, with the exception actually of only a few countries that actually have not. But irrespective of whether we do have a free trade or not, of course, the situation with regards actually to market requirements, if you look into Africa vis-a-vis our other regions where we actually export, the situation in there, or let me say the environment, is still actually quite comfortably actually for our exports. And hence, you know, over the past, you know, few years, we started actually, you know, focusing actually into Africa as a market. And of course, our fresh, or let me say our horticultural, you know, segment actually has been actually benefiting actually from those exports into the African continent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And then over to you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just in summary, and to point out that the shift of the college consultation is ongoing, and that any plans for the shift of the college has been deferred to 2023. However, this will only be considered following consultation at the executive level. Secondly, our locust mitigation plans are in place as we prepare for any future outbreaks, and we're expecting one in September, October. The biggest risk currently is the non-payment of workers by Dalard, but we're engaging with them on a weekly basis around that, and we're working with the relevant structures to ensure that this is resolved speedily. We want to make the note that large parts of the province continue to experience drought conditions, that these areas will require at least 2 to 3 years of above average rainfall for the veld to recover. We've also implemented a number of risk reduction and mitigation projects. That's in addition to the further support, which we believe makes it more sustainable. These projects include seed and invasive alien clearing projects. And then in terms of what Ms. Matoti has just shared, key part is around market intelligence. BFAB has been appointed to conduct end-to-end value chain monitoring and in-house tracking of some prices, example, wheat, fertilizers, fuel, shipment costs, etc. This has been presented at different fora. We'll continue development opportunities in some markets, and we've just spoken about Africa and taking advantage of the African continental free trade area. Are at an advanced stage of developing an Africa strategy. Expansion of food gardens to cushion the vulnerable households against price shocks will continue. I think members would know that this has been a major part of our overall strategy. Credit insurance is available at DTIC for other non-agricultural projects and products, and this will also be taken onto MINMEC. And we will continue engagements with the Cape Town Port on current challenges at the port. Chairperson and members, that wraps up our presentation. Again, thank you for the opportunity and look forward to engagements in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. And from my side, a big thank you for putting together such the presentation in which we asked of you to cover quite a number of areas. Honourable members, it's now over to you for any questions before we allow the officials to continue with their daily tasks. Anybody that would like to raise a hand? Thank you, Honourable Murray. You're first.
Thank you, sir. I'm very concerned about the National Minister presenting us with 5 points to choose from. He's over his head with whatever is already given to him. He's the weakest performing minister. And I don't think that we must ever consider even giving Elsenburg or any other jobs to this minister. He is I don't want to use the words, the only option that possibly could be considered an option is option 3, and that would be the expanding of the existing framework agreement to incorporate all courses offered by Elsenburg. And the legal services, sir, I believe we should tell them to pursue this with vigor and reject all the other 4. Because the DA, as the ruling party, you on record as supporting subsidiarity, even the federal system of government, and so on is the Freedom Front. And we the majority in this house, and there's no way we can ask for more powers on police and metro rail and cede powers in the most important aspect of our role, and that is control and oversight of the agricultural colleges. And I want, before the department leave, to say that we should tell them they must stand firm on this. And I think even if it means going to the Constitutional Court, we cannot let the Minister Bladen Zamandi ruin our agricultural sector. We've been shown here what value we add to South Africa as a whole in terms of food production and strategies. We cannot leave it in the hands of a communist minister. Thank you.
Honourable Murray, we will be coming to resolutions, and I think you've already started formulating some potential resolutions for this committee. But can I first now ask, is there any more information that you would like to ask the officials for? Is there any clarity that they need to provide before we allow them to exit the meeting? If you could indicate by show of hands. Again, is it you, Honourable Murray? Any questions?
I would like them to explain what is meant by proposal 5. Establish Elsenburg as a semi-autonomous higher education institution by provincial decree as per Fort Cox Agricultural College. Could they just explain to the committee exactly what do they mean by decree as per Fort Cox Agri College?
Thank you, Honourable Marais. Yes, and I was also not aware of the dispensation of that college. So can I just ask before I give over to the officials, any other hands at this point in time? None. Over to you, Mr. Jacobs, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I've noted the first part of the comments of Honourable Member Marais, and that's certainly noted. I also just want to confirm that the 5 points reflected is not the 5 points from the National Minister. It's the 5 points agreed upon between the administrative representatives of the Department of Agriculture at provincial level, the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and the National Department of Higher Education and Training, and that those 5 would be tabled at an executive consultation, assuming that will happen at some time soon. The issue around Fort Cox. So Fort Cox is established by way of there was an agreement that Fort Cox would be empowered by way of a provincial, let's say it's a decree, but it was established by way of a provincial bill, but with the agreement of Department of Higher Education and Training that there would be autonomous and independent, and that there is a and I just want to so the way that Fort Cox was established, as I say, it's and it did require the full agreement and support of Department of Higher Education and Training, but they informed and helped to shape a provincial bill, which then established Fort Cox as an agricultural college. Now, as a department and as a province, we have looked at that bill, and there were some elements which certainly we were not entirely comfortable with, but nevertheless, it is a provincial decree, a provincial bill, but supported by the National Department of Higher Education and Training, and that was kind of established almost as a guideline or a pilot to see whether something like that could work in other agricultural colleges. I'm not convinced personally that Fort Cox is the best example, because I think there's a number of challenges that have emerged since then. But I think it was one of the options that we had looked at and said, well, with the appropriate refining of the provincial bill, it could be a model, but I think that's why we included it as a fifth model for or fifth option for consideration by our political principals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs. Can I just check? So this has been funded by the Eastern Cape Provincial Government?
It is funded by the Eastern Cape Provincial Government. That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much then. Honourable members, I do not see any other questions or hands raised at this point in time. And if it's fine with you, I'm going to, Honourable Marais, I see you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to come in before we allow the staff or the officials to exit?
Sir, I would just like to tell the department thank you for answering all the questions, and that we are now in a better position to formulate resolutions, because I didn't even know what was this Fort Cox, but I saw no member ask a question, so I assume they know about Fort Cox and what is the decree of the provincial government there, but now I know a little bit more. But thank you for them for explaining it to us, although I would have liked more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Marais, and I refer the honourable members to the internet. Fort Cox has got quite an informative website as well, and those of you that are interested in that agricultural and forestry college are most welcome to first go and read about them, and hopefully when we have another opportunity to engage on the various options regarding the future of Elsenburg, hopefully we'll be better equipped, and we'll be able to refer to various models under which Elsenburg may be managed in the future. We will be coming back to this, Honourable Marais, for some resolutions, but at this point in time, I really want to say thank you very much to the officials being ably led by Mr. Jacobs. Thank you very much also to your colleague, Dr. Trautmann, and then to Ms. Matoti. Thank you very much. I must say your presentation, I found it most interesting, most informative, and we're holding thumbs. The one overarching impression that I go away with today is just how extremely dynamic the field of agriculture is, how important research and the gathering of information is, be it economic data, be it research in terms of pests, be it the support that you give to farmers when they suffer from droughts. It's really a wide-ranging, I almost want to say spectrum of support and services that you provide to the agricultural sector, for which I believe not only myself, but also the rest of this committee is most grateful. So thank you very much. Thank you for your hard work in this regard. Thank you for assisting the Western Cape to be a province where agriculture is really contributing enormously to job creation, to exports, and in general to economic activity and to feed our nation. So thank you very much. And Mr. Jacobs, with that, unless you want to say a last word, you and your colleagues are welcome to leave the meeting. You're obviously welcome to also continue following us as we discuss resolutions and consider previous documents for approval. Thank you so much.
Chairperson and members, on behalf of the department, again, thank you for engaging with the department. We always welcome these opportunities, and thank you for challenging us as well with some very thought-provoking questions. We really welcome that, and really appreciate your time, and we look forward to the resolutions. We will obviously exit at this point and await those resolutions, but as always, we look forward to future opportunities to engage with you. I also want to hand over to Dr. Trautmann just to say a few final words, and then you can excuse us, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Jacobs, Chairperson and committee members. Thank you so much from my side as well. It is one side to do your job on the departmental level, but we really appreciate when the standing committee takes time with its oversight role, but also to ask questions, and probing questions is always good. It keeps us on our toes. And thank you for your time, and good luck with all your deliberations after this meeting. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. And also to those that supported you quietly, much appreciated. And I wish you all a wonderful remaining part of this day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Honourable members, can I ask in terms of the resolutions that we also try and follow the order of the presentation, thereby first starting with resolutions regarding Elsenburg. And please indicate by raise of hands. in the absence of any hands currently, can I just perhaps propose that we as a committee propose that whatever model is being pursued going forward, that Elsenburg needs to be able to focus on the specific training needs of the agricultural sector in the Western Cape, and that in terms of their curriculum going forward, that they must be able to, say, for example, focus on winemaking, on the kind of products that is extremely important to the Western Cape. That would be my first proposal. Is that generally accepted? Again, unless I have any comment, I accept that. Then the next one is that we therefore would like to see that the Western Cape agricultural sector must be able to determine the curricula of the Elsenburg Agricultural College going forward, as well as the important interaction between the training of our students, including skills training at levels perhaps not at the higher education band, but that the Western Cape should be able to influence that, and also to be able to foster and build on the good relationships between the agricultural sector and the training offered in the Western Cape. I recognize Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I want to latch on to what you are saying in regard to the new jacket of Elsenburg, or the proposed one. And if they have alluded to it, then I apologize if I have missed it. But also if they could give us a timeline proposed to the implementation of the new Elsenburg, if I can call it that. Thanks.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, can we generally accept it? Thank you. Then over to you, Honourable Marais.
I think we've got to be very, very serious about what's happening here. We cannot allow Elsenburg College to be removed from our jurisdiction and our oversight function and under our control. We mustn't even tamper with it. This will then only be the first of many such proposals regarding other matters which falls under us at this present stage. This is going to be a seesaw thing. The mayor asked for something about the metro transport. He wants national to give us that capacity. We have our own minister and premier asking for the powers of police to be given to us. We can't now reverse. You don't reverse a train. A train cannot reverse. You can only go forward. So we are not going to allow the national minister to get his hands on this college. And I would like us to make a resolution, a firm resolution. We are not in favor of it. And that the best possible solution could be, I don't say it's the best, but if we must compromise, then it is that they expand the existing framework agreement, and we will incorporate more courses into in this. But it must not be that we are reneging on rights given to us by both the national and our own constitution. If we cannot bring such a strong case, then we must stop talking federalism or subsidiarity or developing more powers for the province. Then we will be swallowed up head and sinker. So I would like to see, in that respect, that we draft a resolution that we totally object to our department provincially coming to any agreement that would mean we will give powers and authority over Elsenburg over to higher education or whatever it will be. They've messed up our educational system enough.
Thank you, honourable members. A proposal has been put. Any comments? If there are no comments, I will take it that it's been supported. Thank you. And I think, Honourable Marais, you've spoken the last word for now. Surely it's not the last word in the whole debate, but for now, I think you've helped us to come up with a very strongly worded and clearly worded resolution in this regard. Thank you. Honourable members, then going back to the presentation that we've had, is there anything that you would like to add regarding, let's say, the challenges experienced with locusts?
So I know too little about locusts to even suggest something. All I can say is kill them.
Thank you, Honourable Marais, and I appreciate the fact that you even refer to this as an age-old problem, even going back to biblical times. By the way, I read up a little bit about this, and it seems to me that in some other parts of Africa, these brown locusts also seem to be creating havoc and requiring severe intervention, etc. Shall we propose that we, as a committee, noted the fact that whereas these kinds of pests are, in terms of legislation, the mandate of the national government, that we are grateful that the Western Cape government did step in and provided financial support in order to be able to address the problem and to strengthen the control over these locust farms. I see Honourable Maseko.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I think before your proposal, I was in thinking Member Marais spoke a very important thing that I don't know a lot about the locusts, but I just wanted to find out, is it possible to ask the department the nutritional value of the locust? Because I know in the old days, they used to eat the locust. So is this the type of locust that can have the nutritional value that can be also used for something within the agriculture, in light of if we don't want to use the poisons, the chemicals to eradicate them?
Certainly, from my side, I think we're free to ask these kinds of questions, and I think there's already been, we've been informed that apparently they are quite rich in protein, and I think it's an interesting question from your side, Honourable Maseko. So, Honourable members, support for that resolution as well that we expect, that we ask.
Yeah, maybe if we can say maybe the department to do a research of, because if they're saying the eggs can stay there for about 9 to 10 years, then it will be a proactive action to check if in the future, as they do the research, there can be a system of catching them to reuse them for something that is positive rather than have to develop another chemicals to destroy them.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for that, then, honourable members. Can we then step off locusts and go on to the current outlook in terms of rainfall, the droughts, etc. And there I would like to propose that we express our gratitude for the support by means of fodder, but also other projects for farmers hard hit by conditions such as droughts. Again, I take your silence as agreement. Thank you very much. And then in terms of what we've heard about the effect of the Ukraine-Russian war, although some people prefer only to call it an intervention. I know Mr. Putin certainly doesn't speak of a war, but it seems, shall we express our concern about the expectation that the prices of bread and cereals, wheat and cereals, would have on consumers, South African consumers, and particularly the poor. Honorable Maseko.
Sure, I'm trying to find out, I mean, like, if we are going to talk about concerns of the bread, yes, is the concern that we do have, and then what? Because I tend to believe that the resolution or the recommendations that we take after the engagement has to be something that can be corrected, or something that we can build up in a momentum to try to champion that or betterment of the problem that we see. But if we are going to do the resolutions of just acknowledging the problem, I'm trying to find out that then what? We acknowledge that no, the breads are but what will be the action step for us as a standing committee to say what is it that we are going to do for the betterment of the challenge that is there? And I might be wrong, but it's my personal thinking of the decisions.
Yes. Yeah, no, thank you very much for raising. That's a most valid point. Honorable Murray, are you going to assist us in this regard?
Yes, I think that we've got to be practical here, and we've got to be effective. If the price of food is going to go up, we must look at what alternatives there are for the people and ask government to remove or relax the VAT charge on those foodstuffs. And we don't have the facts in front of us, but it's worthwhile looking at what would people consider to be an alternative to whatever prices is now escalating. If I look at fish oil, oh my goodness me, it's almost impossible for people to buy fish oil. We should look at solutions. They must assist here. They can, the 15% VAT, we should look at that for essential foodstuffs, that people could use alternatives and see if there can be a relaxation on that issue. Our Department of Social Services could also go and see Nestle and all those other big companies and see if they can make deals for food parcels at a reduced rate, which pensioners can buy as food parcels when they collect their pensions. You know, we must think out of the box. You know, if you can go to Pick n Pay, ShopRite, all these places, and says, these are few essential groceries which people definitely need, but they can't afford your prices. We can give you X number of orders at all pension payout points where people, after collecting their pensions or grants, can buy such a food parcel at a much reduced rate. You know, this type of out-of-the-box thinking is what I like. And maybe some of you will not agree with me, but we've got to do much more than just raise our hands in despair and say, shame they can't afford it. Shame they're going to be hungry. That's not enough. That's not enough.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. I think Honourable Murray, Honourable Maseko, I'm completely in sync with your thinking. Perhaps I can just motivate it like this. You know, if the price of certain foods go up, then the 15% VAT amount is also going up, which means that government is receiving more taxes because of increasing food prices, and I've got a problem with that. I've got a problem with the fact that, you know, firstly, the poor are suffering, and the one that is benefiting from this suffering by their ability to, you know, create revenue out of taxes is government. And I think that is what the Honourable Maseko and Honourable Marais, if I understand you correctly, is referring to. And therefore, I would like to formulate it as such that we as a standing committee call on the national government to investigate and implement ways and means to lower the cost of living, or at least to lower the increases in the cost of living of particularly the poor, by looking at the reduction in certain levies and taxes, such as, you know, the levies on fuel, which we've heard today is you know, sharply increasing, and it's obviously also you know, affecting the input costs of food production severely. The costs of you know, shipping costs, the costs for making use of our ports, the cost of taxes like VAT on perhaps an even wider range of foodstuffs, etc. Obviously, I think bread is already exempted from tax, but there are many other cereals, etc., that we would like to include in a food basket for poor people that are still being taxed, and that we ask or call on the national government to relieve that kind of cost pressures on the poor. Again, I do not see any hands, and therefore I assume that you are all in agreement with that. Any further points to be raised? Can I then, have I already proposed that we thank the officials of the department for their ongoing support and monitoring of the need in the drought-stricken areas of the Western Cape, and that perhaps we as a committee, after the winter rain season, perhaps ask of the officials to come and address us again on the prospects. By the way, honourable members, in the area where I stay, Stellenbosch in the Boland, the rain to date for 2022 is 80% less than the average for the 14 years preceding 2022. So we've had a very, very long and dry summer season up to now, which is obviously a concern. Honourable Maseko.
Chairperson, I'm sorry, I just went out a bit to the late. There's one thing that I know I'm not in the committee, but when you discuss it, I'll be interested to be in. We are going to start the winter season, of which now we are going to be at a space where the transport, the farm workers on the road, there'll be accidents and all that. So I would appreciate maybe if we can, on the program, put in something that has to do with the farm workers, and also the contingency measures that will be in place, sort of communication or awareness from the department in reacting to what they've seen in the past happening during the winter season for the safety of the farm workers as they commute going to work, and also as they walk towards to work. If that is okay with you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. It has been put, and again, I do not see any hands, so thank you very much for that. It seems to be enjoying general support. By the way, I can just report back, as I'm also a member of the Transport and Public Works Standing Committee, that fortunately, well, we've been informed that there have been increased law enforcement on our roads, particularly in those areas which during the summertime and over the festive season makes use of seasonal workers that require transport to farms, etc. And that I think because of the work of this committee, the Department of Traffic Law Enforcement really stepped up their efforts, and it's my impression, it may be anecdotal, that indeed this last harvesting season for the deciduous fruit, etc., that we've seen less of those horrendous fatal accidents that we've seen during the previous season. Thank you, honourable members. Any further resolutions that you would like to propose at this point in time? Thank you.
I've my phone, Mr. Chairman, of resolutions.
Thank you. Thank you. There will be an opportunity for one or two resolutions going forward when we discuss our application for a study tour, etc. But for now, can I ask Ms. Nikak to please beam up the first documents for our consideration?
We'll do in a second, Chairperson.
Please, the first one is the minutes of the 16th of March.
There we go, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, honourable members. There you see the draft minutes, page 1. Page 2. And page 3, Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to point out that of the members recorded in this set of minutes that were present, it is only you that are present when we get to adopting these minutes,
Thank you. I do see, or I used to see Honourable Smith in the meeting for a while as well. Is Honourable Smith with us? Honourable Smith, have you just signed on? Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Botha. Fortunately, in terms of our...
Chair,
Yes?
can I ask, in me standing in for the Honourable Member Bosman, so I cannot second the minutes?
No, unfortunately, I don't think you would be able to testify that this is indeed an accurate version of events, but fortunately, in terms of the rules of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, we do not actually need a seconder, and unless there's any person that would like to propose that this not be a correct version, I would then, although we try to avoid the situation, I will then from the chair propose that we adopt these minutes. Thank you very much.
Member Smith is talking, Chair.
Oh, wonderful. Honourable Smith, would you be able to second that?
I was just off earlier. So I was hearing you calling out my name, so I was not sure what it was.
Yes, Honourable Smith, just to explain that it's only myself and you that also attended the meeting of the 16th of March. And that would therefore be able, or you would be the only one able to confirm if I put it to the meeting that this set of minutes reflect an accurate version of our meeting.
Chair, I have no problem to confirm that. No?
Good, thank you very much. Seconded then by the Honourable Smith. Ms. Nikkerk, would you please beam up the 18th of March's minutes on our screens?
There we go, Chairperson.
Good, thank you. Please scroll down. Again, there we've got the Honourable Botha and myself and the Honourable Marais that were present. Page 1. Then page 2. Thank you. Page 3. I think that's page 4. Again, can I ask for any comments first, or can we consider this as a accurate reflection of the meeting? Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing earth-shattering on this minutes, on the recording, so I therefore propose it to be adopted.
I second that proposal for its adoption.
Proposed and seconded Botha and Marais. Thank you very much. That brings us to the next item, and that is the quarterly report for January to March 2022. for this committee, and it's also been circulated before, honourable members. You see the membership there. Please scroll down, Ms. Niekerk.
Oh, dankie my skat. Dit is nou klaar. Ek kan nog 5 minute. Baie dankie, Bonnie.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. You just note that you are unmuted currently. Perhaps you can just stand for a moment there. Honourable members, as you know, there's been a number of changes in the composition of this committee. So Ms. Niekerk indicated that there, that for example, Advocate Bartman attended until the 27th of February, so she apologized for the 22nd of February, but then those hyphens or lines indicate that she was no longer a member in March when we met on the 8th, the 16th and the 18th of March. But then, for example, the Honourable Bosman became a member from the 28th of February, and he then attended the 8th, the 16th and the 18th of March. Thank you very much. I think you can move on. Good. And then on that Cluster B visit week, you see there the cost of the oversight. And for this committee, the cost was just under 25,000 Rand. Because we shared the cost with other committees.
Sorry, Chair, I want to see my name, that is, because also I was a member until the February meeting. Is it recorded that way?
Yes, Honourable Maseku, LM.
Okay, until 27th February. Okay.
Only one meeting, and so you've got 100% attendance.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Maseku. Good. Thank you, honourable members. Any proposals that we adopt this report? Honourable Botha.
I propose to adopt, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Any
seconded? It's seconded by Honourable Maseku. Thank you very much. The next document for our consideration is therefore the tracking document as at today's date. That is quite a lengthy document, if I recall correctly. Ms. Niekerk.
Chairperson, this document only notes the outstanding matters on the tracking document. So all the unresolved issues
Good.
are listed here.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to ask that we scroll through the full document. It has been circulated, honourable members. Any proposals that we support this document? Thank you. Honourable Botha, I see you.
Support the correctness of it, Chair.
Thank you so much.
As dit teenwoordig was, dan support ek dit.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. Thank you. So it's been duly considered and adopted. Thank you very much. The next document is our program going forward, honourable members. That's for the remainder of this month and June under item 4.4. Now, we've just come from a constituency period. There you see the 10th of May, that was today's meeting up to now. Then please scroll down so that members can just take note of what is waiting for us. Then on the 24th of May, honourable members, as you know, the full name of this committee is the Department of Environmental Affairs. The Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. And I fear that we've been neglecting the division responsible for development planning somewhat because of time constraints, etc. And they've been invited to come and brief the committee on the growth potential of towns in the Western Cape, the availability or the lack of bulk infrastructure and other factors that determine the demand for growth, as well as the expectations for growth for the Western Cape. We from time to time hear that, we can expect another inflow of people into the Western Cape the size of Bloemfontein or Mangaung. And I think it would be important for us as a committee to take note of that. Then on the 7th of June, when it comes to environmental affairs, an aspect that is often, I believe, neglected, it is the whole issue of air quality. We always believe that the southeasterly wind in the province will keep us healthy, but air quality management is an important aspect, and I was quite shocked to learn of the number of deaths that can be linked to air pollution in places like Mpumalanga, etc., where they have all these power stations that must assist us to keep our lights on, etc. So I trust that would also be quite an interesting meeting, and it would also equip us to be able to judge whether the Western Cape Department of Environmental Affairs is active enough in that regard. And then, Ms. Niekerk, can you scroll down a little bit more? Honourable members, we have, and this stems for those that have joined us in February from a resolution taken last year already, where we had some very interesting presentations on what was called biomass projects, such as, for example, projects to manufacture biofuels, even I think aviation fuels, etc., from biomass. And also, as you know, after the Knysna fires, we've got a problem with a lot of aliens that sprung up because aliens quite often flourish after fire. And obviously, and I think this follows on to the suggestion of Honourable Maseku regarding the locusts. How can you turn a pest around into an asset or a job creator, etc.? And we've indicated as a committee last year that we would like to bring a site visit to the Southern Cape, namely places like Karatra, etc., to go and see for ourselves some of those initiatives. And then also something which this committee decided before was to go and visit some of these small-scale farmers, and particularly some perhaps emerging farmers, and just hear from them to what extent do they find that the Department of Agriculture is meeting their needs for training, for support, etc. Okay, and Ms. Niekerk, perhaps is this an appropriate time now to also just already alert the members to the various logistical arrangements that would be needed by this visit, and the various options that there may be available for members to get to the Southern Cape?
That's fine, Chairperson. I've listed the options here. The committee can then decide which option they would want to use, keeping the budget of the committee in mind, of course. So the committee can basically decide if flights are going to be used. If flights are going to be used to George, ground transport of 10,000 Rand estimated cost would also have to be procured. Alternatively, the committee can decide if members want to then use their own private vehicles. The budget estimation here is based on 3 members of this committee using their own vehicle, traveling a distance of 1,000 kilometers, which may be more, taking into account where the projects are situated, at an average cost of 4.20 per kilometer. So that would be the cost if 3 members were to use their private vehicles. And then the other alternative is the use of WCPP transport. The legislature has 2 buses which it can make available for the visit to the Southern Cape. The cost incurred would be 0 because the cost is is allocated to the logistical services section and not to the committees. So that cost does not come from the committee's budget, but ultimately, Chairperson, is the committee's decision how they want to, which mode of transport they would want to use.
Yes, thank you, honourable members. Can I just say, in terms of the flights to George, I know that, or I expect that a number of members would love to be back on the eve of the 15th in order to be able to attend to Youth Day celebrations and activities. So I've actually asked Ms. Niekerk to try and plan the itinerary such that some of these farm projects that we intend to observe be along the end to, I almost want to say, halfway back to Cape Town. Let's say in the vicinity of Swellendam, etc. And it unfortunately therefore wouldn't make sense to, attend something in Swellendam and then drive back to George Airport and then to catch a plane back to Cape Town. By that time, I believe that the minibuses would be able to have you back home or back in Cape Town even before the flights might land in Cape Town. So this was just now to kind of sensitize members to the various options. Ms. Niekerk will in due course still liaise with members, but at this point in time, there will be at least one minibus going, and in order for us also to observe social distancing, should all the members choose to travel with WCPP transport, then the expectation would be that we travel in 2 buses, which will obviously also allow, should anything happen, we know sometimes, members fall ill, etc., that there will then be, a second backup vehicle to assist, and if everything goes according to plan, then we can spread the committee evenly between the combis, and the minibuses would then allow us, to keep our social distancing, which I think is something which we still need to take into consideration. Good. So at this point in time, can I ask that, as a committee, we say we would be positively considering requests from members that might indicate that they would prefer to travel via with private vehicles, but obviously that the final decision in this regard as to who travels with whom and how we travel will be taken closer to the time. I see Honourable Botha.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm just noting the dates here for that travel to George, and I just want to indicate that that week of the 20th is also a cluster visit week. So I am parking that here for now, just to indicate that that week is a proposed cluster visit week in our parliamentary program. And we should consider whether we are going to do both consecutively. And then I want to ask, and I don't know, you must guide me here, in regard to and we've seen it with COVID, and I'm talking on the environmental leg of this standing committee. The available grave sites in municipalities, whether at some point in time we could incorporate that into our program. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. Can we? I'm asking of Ms. Niekerk to make a note of that, because yeah, you're correct. I think in the past we got a feedback on crematoria, and I think it's important that we also know that even in terms of graveyards, that there is planning not only at local government level, but also at the regional and provincial level. So thank you very much for that. Can I just say the dilemma that we have is that we've got a number of outstanding issues in terms of our tracking document, which specifically refers to the Southern Cape, Karatra, etc. And I do know that the decision on the cluster visit has not yet been taken in terms of, you know, where that should be taking place. So if I think it's good that you raised that you made us aware of that. But I also believe that, you know, with the 16th of June as Youth Day, unfortunately, you know, we need to be back on the afternoon of the 15th of June. Can I also just ask of members, and I recognize Honourable Maseko's hand, the idea is that, you know, if we are going to spend the 14th, which is the Tuesday, and the 15th, the Wednesday, in the Southern Cape, that we will in all probability have to leave on the Monday afternoon, the 13th, which might influence on constituency work. But then, as I've said, the whole planning is to ensure that you will be able to be in your constituency on the 16th, which is Youth Day, and which I believe may be a wonderful day for all kinds of events furthering the interest of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Honourable Maseko, your hand was up and then lowered again.
No, after you recognized me, I lowered it. Chairperson, I'm looking, and then I'm looking at a program. It's until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the members have to travel. Let's say, for argument's sake, they are using their cars. They have to travel back. And then they have to do the preparations for the 16th, maybe. And after that, like Member Lorraine, I just want you to know that, like Member Botha indicated, that we will have a cluster visit, which is going to happen, and it's going to be in Overberg. I suspect we are going to agree on the Overberg area. Now, with that being said, and the traveling, and also you and Shireen indicating the cost implications, that also the cluster is there's going to be a cost implications. I just wanted to flag that in mind, that that is the reality of that period of time, within that short period of time, that all that and the traveling will be happening. So keep that in mind as the final decision is being taken.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think what we can say then is that this is the planning from this committee side, as they always say, with the light currently at our disposal, and that obviously when the venue and the program for the cluster visit is being considered, that we then also say, please take into account, you know, this committee's program. See if you can combine the two programs, whether that would make sense that we all go the next week to the Southern Cape, etc. As I've said, we are bound by previous resolutions of this committee. Now, I presume resolutions can be changed, but you know, I wouldn't like some of our outstanding. We've been doing quite well in terms of our tracking document to attend to issues. But I would like to finalize some of these that have been coming along for more than 8 months already. Good. So keep that in mind. I just wanted members to note that at this point in time. Thank you. Ms. Nikek, we've come to the end of that document.
The document runs for the entire financial year, Chairperson.
Okay, good.
But Chi, I think just up until June is fine if we can adopt that. The rest of the program there's a provision has been made for the Cluster B visit week for June or July. We didn't have an exact date at the time I drafted the program. Our program also makes provision for legislation, for one piece of legislation that may be referred to the committee. And then it's just the routine cyclical business of the committee in terms of annual reports and budgets and adjusted budgets and so forth, Chairperson.
Good, thank you very much. So, honourable members, can I ask that we therefore adopt, but also taking into account the possibility that it may be revised? I think, you know, you need a plan. You can't just go into the future without a plan. But then on the other hand, should circumstances change, you must be able to adapt, obviously, to new or unexpected events that may come up. With that, I recognise first Honourable Botha and then Honourable Maseko.
Chair, taking into account everything you say around this draft program, I would therefore adopt the draft program.
Thank you. We've got a proposal. A seconder, Honourable Maseko.
Chair, I echo what Honourable Member Botha said in seconding the proposal.
Good, thank you very, very much. Then, honourable members, and again, I know a number of you are at a disadvantaged position, not having served on this committee before, and therefore I'm really grateful that Honourable Maseko is with us here today. Can I ask that Ms. Niekerk also beam onto our screens the annual activity report for the previous financial year? Again, it's quite a lengthy document. We've been a very active committee. It's again also been circulated beforehand. And can I put this in for consideration, please? The annual activity report. Thank you, Honourable Maseko.
Chair, I move that we support the document.
Thank you. Any other comments or?
Echo.
Thank you. It's been adopted. Thank you very much. Honourable members, and this brings us then to point 5 on our agenda. It is the second last item, and that is the outcome of the international study trip proposal. Honourable members, you might know, and I'm not so sure if the speaker is really that aware of it, but there's been a bilateral cooperation agreement signed between the government of the Western Cape and the state of California in the USA. And we've previously been briefed as a committee on the, say, for example, the climatic similarities. In California, they've also experienced a Mediterranean climate, and therefore they have very similar products that we produce. For example, in the Nepal Valley, they produce also wine, etc. And while there are certainly certain differences, there are a lot of similarities. And I was privileged to be present when that agreement was signed, albeit online. It was signed online. I was here in Cape Town with Minister Meyer and Premier Windy and the Secretary of the Department of Food and Agriculture on the side of California. They were present on that side. And we then submitted a request to the Speaker's office to allow us to go and study, you know, and see what we can learn from the state of California, because we believe that there are huge opportunities for us to learn, also the way in which they deal with droughts, something which they have apparently recently also suffered. Unfortunately, our international study trip request was turned down by the Speaker's office, and obviously we hope to submit a request again. In the meantime, Honourable Maseku, also as a chair of the Standing Committee on Human Settlements, also saw huge opportunities for us to go and study in terms of best practices for human settlements, etc. And perhaps I must allow her to speak for herself. And I do know that during the previous parliamentary term, preference was given to not only one committee, undertaking a study tour, but if members could share their experiences and share the costs, therefore, and kind of undertake 2 study tours or more, by incurring only, let's say, 1 return flight ticket, etc. Honourable Maseku, I'm not putting you on the spot, but would you like to perhaps just latch on to what I've said in terms of your application for an international study tour?
No, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, you nailed it with the InfoSomfa. We also, from Human Settlements, we took it upon your lead, of which we submitted, I think, almost the same time, the application for the study tour, also in California, looking at California also as it divides their housing into the income levels, categories from the low income, they even have the very low and the extremely low income, to check how do they go about to also react and maximize with what they have to make sure the housing within their state, it's really accessible. So all the study, all the research has been done, everything, the application to go to the, of which it has to be the Deputy Secretary when coming to the study tours, has been submitted to the right office. Now, the challenge one is we haven't received any communications to say that what is going to happen. And my wish was for the members to go for this financial year, and keeping in mind that the 2019, 2020, 2021, there was no any international study tours. So that means the allocation for those years must be somewhere that maybe can be accessed. Now, it's a little bit frustrating if we are not getting the response in moving forward. But what I said to from procedural officers that we continue as if we are going to go there this financial year and get everything in order, then the institution will be the one that is still outstanding to give us the response of whether they agree with the proposal that we leave maybe September or October, if that can be allowed in those months.
Good.
If not, if not, that means they will have to say what are the challenges, and then is then that we can have mitigating factors to say how are we going to deal with it.
Good.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Maseku, for that background as well. So, honourable members, if I could ask that we as a committee express our support for us to reapply. Secondly, our support for 2 or perhaps even more committees to combine or to work together in putting together an itinerary. And thirdly, for us as a committee to express, say that since there is this cooperation agreement, interstate cooperation agreement, that we as a committee would like to really show our American partners in this agreement that the support for this agreement is not only at the level of officials, but it's also at the level of the provincial government, as represented by us as members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I do not see any hands, so I take that again as concurrence. Good. Thank you very much, Honourable Botha.
Yes, Chair, I support that. In principle, I support the vision.
Honourable Marais.
Chair, I'm hearing you talking about housing that they want to go in. Are you talking about housing for farm workers? Because I don't understand what have we got to do with housing.
No.
Can you just give clarity on this?
Yes, no. Thank you, Honourable Marais. A number of members serve on both this committee as well as on the Human Settlements Standing Committee. And the chairperson of Human Settlements, which is the Honourable Maseko, she also applied on behalf of her committee for a visit to California and as a study tour. And what we're now expressing is that, you know, we as a committee would support the idea of, let's call it the two committees cooperating in terms of going to California. I think it's easier for our hosts if they, you know, don't have to host two visits or two separate groups from the Western Cape, let's say a week or 2 weeks apart. But if they receive us as, let's call it, one study tour, obviously we will focus from our side on the agricultural and environmental aspects. But then I think, you know, knowledge is power. If we can pick up something on the human settlements or housing side that we can apply to agriculture, obviously that would be a bonus. But that our colleagues on human settlements, they will concentrate on the housing question. And then obviously if they can pick up something regarding, let's say, for example, agri-villages, or if they pick up something regarding various options for housing, which might apply to farms there, that would again be a bonus.
Chair, okay. If I may come in, it's not even about the agri-villages. It's not something that we are going to look into. So the modus operandi in our legislature, it was always when we go for international tours, study tours, Honourable Marais, it's better if we combine different portfolios and go for the study on a certain area and look at different portfolios, the best practices or whatever that we want to look at as a group. So we are not going to be human settlement piggybacking on agriculture. We'll have the session of the agriculture, we'll have the session of the human settlements. We can add and have the session of their infrastructure and also their transport, because if they have to do the special planning, it's inclusive to everything that have to do with the human settlements. But it's more of maximizing with that cost of the tour to grab as much info or study as much as we can where we are going.
I would have thought if that was the idea, Chairman, because it's a cluster visit, we don't need to take all 5 members with their officials with. You need to take the chairman of that particular committee who want to piggyback on us with the head of a department. I think that would stand a better chance to get the speaker to agree to it. But
okay, can I just ask, please, through the chair? Can I just ask, please, through the chair?
I just feel that I'm trying to find out why the speaker would say no. It would be very expensive. And I wanted to know if the main visit is by the Agricultural Committee, but that any other committee sees an opportunity to piggyback on them and go and find out something which is not the main objective, but a side objective, then if they made a proposal that the chairman of that committee and the head of that department want to accompany, it would have stood a far better chance of being accepted.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. My understanding is that when 2 committees combine something like that, that they are equal partners and it's not the one piggybacking onto the other. Perhaps just quickly over to Honourable Maseko, but I also recognize Honourable Botha.
Chair, it's not piggybacking. It's about, remember, also the mandate of us as members to do an oversight. Each and every member also have to go for their study tours. It's not for the chairperson only. So we don't piggyback. We look at the areas where we can go for study tour and learn some of the best practices from there. So if we go agriculture and the human settlement, we are going to have the topics like we go for the cluster visit, like we will be going for June, and deal with different issues at that area. So there's no piggybacking, it's just different committees going for the study tours for different topics within that country.
Honorable Botha.
Thank you very much. I just want to know through you, in regard to the proposal of doing an international study tour, have the procedural officer started the groundwork for that to happen? And where are we with that? At what stage are we now? Is there something in writing already that the procedural officer can flight? And then I want to also propose, Chair, for you and the chairperson of Human Settlements with the next chairperson's forum that would be scheduled in the parliamentary program, if you could have preparations ready for that meeting, also in order to engage the deputy speaker on this proposal for the two committees that would cluster for this international study tour. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I think the best person to brief us on, let's call it the procedure followed up to now and the feedback received is Ms. Niekerk. Ms. Niekerk, will you please just assist the members in this regard?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Members, well, the resolution was taken. The chairperson then, and in accordance to the international relations policy, in line with that policy, which says the committee chairpersons who are interested in a study visit must submit proposals to the speaker by November for consideration for the next financial year. The proposal was sent through to the Speaker's office on the 14th of March. The policy also said that the focus area to be studied by the committee has to have research that needs to be conducted to inform the selection of the country and taking into consideration any bilateral or international agreements, which was pointed out in the motivation to the speaker. Now, a copy of the letter that was sent to the speaker and the research that the committee received from the research section based on the agreement with California was sent to all members of this committee. Subsequently, the committee then received, or not the committee, the director of the committee section also sent a memo through to the Speaker's office, but this memo stated that two committees were interested in undertaking the study visit, the cost for each committee, the allocated budget for international study trip, and a recommendation was made by the director to the speaker that only one committee at this stage, based on budget, the funds available, be considered for international travel. The secretary supported the recommendation. The deputy speaker supported the recommendation, and she further recommended that the trip to Brazil, which is the joint trip between education and social development, be approved. And as such, the speaker noted it, and that is how the Brazil trip was approved. Okay.
Thank you for that briefing.
Answers members' question, Chairperson.
Thank you. I believe you've answered it well, but there may be subsequent questions to that. So members, the resolution that we're asking for is that therefore we reapply, and that with this application that we then also refer to the application from Human Settlements and that whereas the first application, I believe, went in as a, let's call it a single committee application, that this now be submitted as a dual application. Honourable Maseko.
Chair, I'm trying to find out why do you want to reapply? Because that application is still standing. The only thing that I feel has to be finalized have to be the date of when, or the month of when, whether being this year or next year. But that has to be finalized without reapplying. I'm just stuck on this reapplying in why is it necessary to you to reapply? What will be different in the second application? Because from human settlements also we applied and we send the information. I think it's not even an application. It's a matter of the wish to go for the study tour to fulfill our the mandate, oversight mandate for the study tours. And then the only thing that is outstanding is for the office of the Deputy Speaker to say when is it possible due to the budgetary constraints. Yeah.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. Just to respond, the first thing is, by considering two applications and only approving one, I took it that means that the other one was turned down. What will be different, as you asked? I think this time round we will ask of the Speaker to consider what I call the dual application, where we say we are willing as committees to cooperate in terms of the itinerary, flight times, etc. And therefore the saving will be, for example, with only, half the procedural officers having to accompany us, then should we go separately as two study tours.
Okay, sorry, Chair, can I suggest something? Can we, since we got in principle that the committee members, they agree, can we take it offline, me and you and Shumis and Sherin, then we will iron it out to be very beautiful, and then we'll take it forward and come back to report to the committee members.
Agreed, but I think the resolution from this committee is that we continue to pursue this, but that we now pursue this as a deal one, and that the detail, as you've said, we can iron out outside of this meeting. Good, thank you very much. Honourable members, that brings us to the last point on the agenda, and I've already received a message on my screen that we've got less than 5 minutes left of our scheduled time, and that is the item called General. Anything that anybody would like to raise at this point in time?
Chairman, if I may, with your permission, you know what we are doing? We're saying there's no examples of better governance in the whole of Africa. We must always look to the very people we condemn, and that is the West, and we must look to Europe, because there's nothing in Africa we can copy, not even agri-villages. We're going to go overseas to look for it, and I just find it extremely funny that these are the very countries that ridicule us and condemn us, but there's nothing we can learn from them. Just wanted to say.
Okay, noted. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, on record, we don't condemn countries, so that has to be on record that we don't condemn the countries that Mary said.
Thank you, and I think
I don't know such a ruling. She's making it up, sir.
No, I see your tongue is in your cheek, Honourable Murray, when you say that. So, honourable members, thank you very much. On that note, with Honourable Murray moving his tongue from the one cheek to the other, I want to say thank you very much for a lengthy meeting, but I hope you found it the most informative meeting. Thank you for your active participation. And honourable members, I look forward to seeing you all again in our next meeting 2 weeks from now. Until then, stay safe, look after yourself, and thank you very much for serving in this regard. Good night.
Thank